You probably experienced this before. Someone new joins a group, maybe at school, at work, and within minutes, everyone seems to like them. They're friendly, funny, they know exactly what to say. And while everyone else is impressed, you feel something different. It's not dislike. It's just a strange feeling, like something doesn't fully add up. You can't explain it, because on the surface, everything seems fine, but still, something feels off. And the most interesting part is that, over time, small details start to appear, things that confirm that first impression. But when you try to explain it to others, it feels like no one else noticed anything. And that's when you start to wonder, how is no one else seeing this? This is what it feels like when you can read people's emotions without even trying. This doesn't happen by accident. And if this sounds familiar, there's a reason. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why your brain catches what others miss. And one of the main reasons this happens is something most people never notice. It's how their response happens, not just what they say. People who read others quickly pay attention to small delays, hesitation before answering, responses that come a second too late or too fast, even facial expressions that don't match what's being said. Because when someone is genuine, their reactions tend to flow naturally. But when something is off, there's usually a break, like a puzzle where one piece simply doesn't fit. And most people don't notice this at all. But if you do, you start to see patterns. And that's where everything changes. Because the truth is rarely in the words, but in everything happening around them. Some emotional expressions don't last long enough to be noticed by most people. They appear for less than a second and disappear right after. But even so, they're still there. This kind of reaction was studied by a psychologist named Paul Ekman, a renowned professor at the University of California, San Francisco. He showed that even when someone tries to hide what they feel, the face reveals involuntary microexpressions, quick signals that appear before conscious control. These findings became so important that they started being used in lie detection training, in investigations, in behavioral analysis, places where reading people isn't optional. A brief look of irritation before a smile appears, a micro sign of discomfort before a calm response. And this happens because the emotional brain reacts first, and only afterward does the rational brain try to adjust it. Now think about how many times you felt this. Someone says they're fine, but for a moment, something feels off. You can't explain exactly what you saw, but you feel it wasn't completely genuine. Most people ignore that moment, but some pick up on it instantly because they start to notice a pattern. The words say one thing, but the face reveals another. And once you begin to notice this consistently, it becomes impossible to unsee. That's what makes it easier for you to read people. And after a while, it's no longer just about noticing what's happening. You start to predict. Before someone even finishes a sentence, you already have a sense of where it's going. Not because you're guessing, but because you've seen that pattern before. Your brain does this all the time. It compares the present with past experiences and tries to anticipate what comes next. And this starts to show up in very simple situations, like when someone begins explaining something and you already know they're going to justify themselves in the end, or when a person gives a vague answer and you can tell they're avoiding something, or even that moment when someone says, "Relax, everything's fine," and you already feel like it's going to turn into a problem later. Most people only notice this when it happens, but some notice it before because they start to recognize repetitions, not just in what people say, but in how they act, react, and avoid. And once that pattern becomes clear, you don't need to wait for the outcome. You already understand the direction. And that's why so often you can see where things are going before anyone else. But here's what most people with this ability never stop to consider. Noticing everything comes with a cost. But there's a side to this that almost no one talks about. The more you notice, the harder it becomes to switch off. You walk into a space, and you don't just see people talking. You notice who's uncomfortable, who's forcing a smile, who's avoiding someone. While most people relax, your mind keeps processing. and that's exhausting. Sometimes you leave a conversation feeling drained, not because something happened, but because you picked up too much. Small tensions, subtle shifts, things most people don't even register. There's even research showing that some people process more environmental stimuli, which means they notice more, but also get overwhelmed more easily. Now think about something simple, a group conversation where you try to focus, but your attention keeps pulling elsewhere. You're noticing who's disengaged, who's bored, who's trying to please. And over time, it starts to weigh on you. And that's where people get it wrong. They think it's shyness or disinterest. But it's not. You're not just part of the moment. You're absorbing everything in it. And that's why sometimes being quiet or stepping back isn't about avoiding people. It's about recharging. After noticing all of this, it becomes easier to understand something. Maybe you're not overanalyzing. Maybe you've just developed a different way of reading people. Because in the end, the difference isn't in how much you think. It's in how much you can interpret. Most people listen to what's being said, but some read what's behind the words. And that changes everything. You start to understand intentions before they're explained. You notice patterns before they become obvious. And many times, you understand what someone really means, even when they don't say it. And maybe the most curious part of all this is that you can't always explain how you know, but you know, and this has happened to you before, in moments where no one else noticed anything, but you read the situation differently. And once you start seeing this clearly, it becomes hard to go back, because it's no longer just about hearing people. It's about knowing how to read what's really happening. Now tell me something. Do you feel like you can read people easily? Or do you only understand things better after the situation has already happened? I'd really like to know how this works for you.